You know that I'm not that keen of including Piers Morgan's show on my show because I really don't endorse the guy. But in this case, well, he had a panel talking about COVID, talking about the pandemic, and talking about the reaction to the pandemic. And it was Dr. Birx. You remember Dr. Birx? This lady that was quite controversial as well, when she had some words about what was the actual, or what really happened behind closed doors. And I can understand that Brian Johnson was there, the Don't Die guy. I don't know what Grant Cardone was doing there, but well, I don't know. But I want to talk about what Dr. Birx said regarding the vaccines. Now, Birx is throwing more health officials under the bus, claiming the vaccine rollout also ignored the science. This is something that I have told you many times. This is also something that I was criticized back in 2020 about that it doesn't make sense, and about all those lies that it was going to stop the spread. False, that doesn't work like that. She stated that the mRNA jab was developed to target those at high risk of severe illness. That makes sense. Not specifically the general population. That would make sense. You create something for the one who are most vulnerable, but not for the general population, because it's well, I'm going to continue. The messenger RNA vaccine should have been rolled out for the people that were at risk for severe disease, because that's what the vaccine was developed for, Birx said. Okay. I wouldn't blame her if she didn't know that at the time. I don't have records of she knowing or not knowing. There was a lot kept under wraps back then. You know that there's so many reasons why Biden pardoned Fauci, or pre-pardoned Fauci, just in case anything happened after January 1st, 2014. And she also confessed the COVID shot was never designed, quote unquote, to prevent infection. Yeah, because anybody with half a brain and 15 minutes to search on YouTube and on Google the technology, you would realize that that's not how those vaccines work. Okay, they could work against COVID itself, but don't tell me that the vaccines do something that they don't do, because that is going to make everybody doubt that these things actually do what they do, besides the obvious conflict of interest with Big Pharma. That is not what the COVID vaccine was designed to do. It wasn't designed against infection. Now she tells us, and I'm going to tell you, she already knew back then. But she didn't say anything about that because she didn't want to lose her job. How many people lost their jobs because of that? How many people risked everything because of that? How many people put something experimental inside them for no particular reason, something that was made? It makes sense. For people at high risk, when you're at high risk and you have the option between being dead and having an experimental treatment, you absolutely will go for the experimental treatment. That makes sense. That is common sense. I mean, the other option is that you get any disease. For example, you get any disease and you are in a risk group and you die. No, but well, I prefer to go for the experimental thing. It's like this guy who was transplanted like some sort of a chimera kidney. It was a blend between a human and pig kidney. This is my understanding that it went well. Okay, that is a last resort thing until we can 3D print full organs, which that will be just awesome. Imagine that you need an organ for transplant and you don't have to wait in line for somebody else's organ, but you can 3D print your own organ with your own DNA, and a brand new liver or a brand new kidney for you, and be implanted into you, and it works flawlessly, and you don't have to you won't even need retrovirals for that. That would be awesome. But again, as everything in medicine, you have to extensively test things. And that's one of the things that RFK Jr. wants to make sure that, okay, we can have vaccines, but we want to make sure that all of them are as safe as possible. No treatment, even antibiotics. I always mention antibiotics. No treatment is 100% safe, but what is the other option? It's like when it boils down to it, like everything can be a poison, but you want to make sure that the right dose of poison sometimes can be beneficial to you, like drugs, right? Like that's why we call them drugs. But let's watch this, and you get to your conclusion by yourself.
He made it very clear to every mom out there that his children were immunized about childhood vaccines.
Yeah.
And what we've done wrong in public health is we didn't explain that COVID vaccines were nothing like the childhood vaccines, and that the childhood vaccines, like many of the diseases, you get it once, you don't get it again. And this is getting the children to have that disease without getting the deadly consequences. That is not what the COVID vaccine was designed to do. It wasn't designed to prevent against infection. And if you look at the vaccine hesitancy rates, they've doubled since COVID. So we have to start addressing these things.
That is something that I think was really stupid on all this government's part. You didn't think that openly lying to the public about something that in the future could actually be good. I mean, you know me, you already know my stance. I am up for everything in regards to advanced science and medical tech of any kind, including mRNA vaccines, if you can make them safe enough to actually not be experimental. But by lying to the public, then you have induced a vaccine hesitancy that can be actually dangerous. That is not the idea behind that. That's not the idea, because there are actual treatments. I cannot talk, you know that I'm very private about my personal life, but I can tell you there are things in my life that, thanks to vaccines, not the COVID vaccines, other kinds of vaccines have, let's say that turn out for the better or great or awesome. Maybe at some point I will tell the whole story. But yes, that's what these advances are for. And if you begin to lie just to push something that people didn't really need, some people didn't really need at that moment, then that's what you're going to get. Backlash, vaccine hesitancy, which is really bad, because it's going to take a lot to take that away from people. Because people don't, it's logical that people don't trust governments anymore. And trust in doctors is at all-time low. It is a normal byproduct of lying to the public.
Can't just ignore
and Deborah,
them.
let me ask you, Deborah, I mean, given that you were the face of COVID from the Trump presidency at the time, do you share, this doctor who I was with, do you share the concerns about the longer-term negative impact of some of the COVID vaccines?
The messenger RNA vaccine should have been rolled out for the people that were at risk for severe disease, because that's what the vaccine was developed for. But when we say that we're following the science and the data, we need to follow the science and the data. And the science and the data said people primarily over 65 or people with significant comorbidities were at risk for severe disease. Those are the individuals that should have been immunized first. And we should have put our science behind our immunization schedule and protected those most at risk. It went into young people in hospitals before it went into our elderly in nursing homes. That is not following the science and the data.
No, that is following the lining the pockets of big pharma. There was a big business. Big business.
I am all for following the science and the data, but it shouldn't just be a statement. It should be a reality. And when we don't match what we do in public health to the science and the data, that is when we get into trouble. And that's when we start to fracture trust with the American people.
You know, this is the same example as with Mark Zuckerberg This is the same example as with Linda Lee. It is the same example of all these people that want to retcon. You remember that term from pop culture when you have a new series of a Star Trek, for example, and they try to retcon the lore of a Star Trek or retcon the lore of Star Wars. Essentially rewrite history. Like, no, we never say that, or at least I never said that. She was responsible for that as well. She had the knowledge, and she had the outreach, and she had the influence, and she had the position to speak on behalf of that all the way back in 2020, and she didn't. So this is the kind of things that, of course, upset me. Because they want to, this is, with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, we shouldn't have done that back then because it was not designed for that. And you 100% knew that because us regular citizens, we didn't even have artificial intelligence to help us do a Google search. We did a Google search, we ran the numbers, and we realized, no, this is a lie. This is something that, this is not designed for the general public. This is not designed to what they claim for, to stop the spread. No, that doesn't work like that. So many people were fooled into taking that under that pretense. And again, I have to say, if you talk about people with a high risk of dying if they get COVID, then absolutely 100% deliver the vaccines to them. That it could work for them. It could, between dying and whatever the vaccine, the experimental vaccine can do to you, it's better to take the vaccine. Go for it. We have to talk about common sense. We have to talk about statistics. But this is not the way. That's why we have to call out these people that had seemed to, all of a sudden, years after the fact, yeah, you know what, what a coincidence. What a coincidence that Trump assumes office, that Biden pardons Fauci, that everybody knows that all these things are going to surface, not only USAID, not only, everything is going to surface. And, well, I guess that they are scrambling to do the corresponding PR run because they don't want to people to realize that that Dr. Birx effectively had the position back then, had the influence, had the possibility, had the knowledge, had everything to speak this same thing. No, that doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. This that she's talking about, these words, she could have said in 2020, and she decided not to speak out. So you tell me how can we judge her? You tell me in the comments. Let me know what do you think about this in the comments.